What's up? This is More Than Mortgages. Thanks for joining us. I'm Chad Anderson. Zach Jones will be here just in a few seconds. Today, we've gone through, this is episode 16. Hard to believe. It's been a lot of fun. We appreciate you and everything you've done. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit the bell, comment, DM, share. We appreciate the engagement and all of you who have reached out, whether on social media or on the side. Really, truly keeps us going and helps us with the energy to want to do this each and every week as part of it. So thank you so much for that. Today, we're going through something that might seem simple, but really it gets screwed up quite a bit. And that is the home buying process. When do you apply? When do you make an offer? When do you shop rates? When do you interview a realtor? When do you get your home inspection? When do you get your appraisal done? When do you close? What do you do before closing? What do you do after closing? What should you be prepared for? We've made jokes about the do's and the don'ts or the 10 commandments or these types of things, but has anybody actually laid out the timeline? Well, that's what we're going to do right this minute. So from the great state of Florida in the sunshine, there's Zach Jones. How are you today, bud?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm sitting in really warm weather, and it's sunny today. Spring is here. I don't live full time in Florida, but I'm down here doing some work. And
Work.
spring.
Yeah, Zach's got a lot of work he's been doing.
Listen, I'm working. I talked to a customer this morning, locked a loan on Friday. This is good. I'm still working. So we're a little bit further in the spring where I am than where you are in Tennessee, but it's the buying season from a traditional standpoint. Now, there's a lot of years memory where we didn't really have a season. It just was buy all the time. But in Tennessee, the buttercups are blooming and weather's warming up and the grass is turning green and it's time to buy a house. So let's talk about that.
Let's do it. So yeah, it's a beautiful spring day here in Nashville as well for the day that this is being recorded. So I actually just got out and got to do a walk for a little while today. So always nice to enjoy other people doing walks or customers and realtors right now because they're all over the place, especially on the weekends. I'm seeing a lot more cars kind of doing the old, what I call the rubberneck in the neighborhood, just the constant this and that and checking out the for sale signs and going 25 through the neighborhood until you come up on the house. And then it's the slow 4 miles per hour going by each and every one. So people are definitely out. People are checking things out, but there's a lot of misconception on the timeline and kind of the proper way. Now, you could say, you got to remember this is all subjective because what Zach and I may believe could be something different. And even Zach and I could have some different opinions on some stuff, but it comes down to making sure the expectations are set. You don't go to jail or anything for doing something out of order, but it just makes things go smoother and it eliminates variables and it eliminates people getting frustrated or upset or getting blindsided or things like that. That's why you do these things in this order. And it's really to minimize, and you're doing damage control in what is a lot of times a stressful situation, just because you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so you're naturally stressed. Hopefully the process is easy, but that's what we want to talk about. So first and foremost, Zach, I think this one's the easy one, right? This is like the basketball drills before the game. This is the layup line. First thing, get pre-qualified.
That's exactly right.
Very, very first thing. Like if you want to poke around on Zillow or realtor.com or Realtrax or whatever MLS systems in your market, fine, poke around, knock yourself out. But before you start picturing the cookouts and the kids in the pool and on the play sets and the big family get-togethers at the dining room table and all those things, you better double check and make sure you even qualify, because that's really, really, really the first step. And to wrap up my piece, I'll hand it to Zach for a second, is people a lot of times too have their own idea. They've self-qualified. Well, you shouldn't self-diagnose yourself if you're sick. You shouldn't self-qualify either. Just because Credit Karma told you you've got an 850 when really you got a 650. Just because your 1099 said $150,000 last year. Just because you don't have any debt, or just because you have $500,000 in the bank, whatever the case may be, those are not automatic qualifiers. So you need someone to actually check this for you and check and double check and run through some scenarios and make sure you're good. And by the way, us as lenders, we're the ones spending money and time on your behalf. And that's part of the business. I'm not complaining about it, but we're spending money on your behalf. It's free for you to literally just call us up and say, hey, I want to know what I qualify for. It's literally free,
Right.
versus you going out and then trying to figure it out for yourself. So I'll let you add on to that. But pre-qualifying, number one, it's not even close. That's the first thing you do.
So, Chad, you said don't self qualify, and it just like rung a bell in my head because I see a ton of people also self disqualifying where they call up
Great
and they're
point.
kind of him and hawing around, and well, I don't really know if I can do this, and my brother in law said that I ought to give you a call, and suddenly you're like, well, you're an ace, you got an excellent credit score, we can work this with the down payment, and your situation is such and such, and this. You need to be buying a house. Why didn't you call me 18 months ago? You've been in shape to buy a house for a long period of time. So don't make any assumptions. This is an easy conversation. I literally had a referral this afternoon. It was a few minutes before lunchtime. We had this appointment with Chad to do this podcast today at 1. I called the guy. We ran through a scenario. He had some very interesting questions. He's a VA loan qualifier and had some nuances to his situation.
Mhm.
We ran through the telephone conversation in 10 minutes. I shot him an email with my application and shot a text to the agent, said, hey, I'm just waiting on it to come in. And so when that information comes on over to my side, at least this is my process, I'm going to pull credit. I'm going to run through the application information. I'm going to run through the documentation that they send in. And this is, if you're kind of quasi organized on your computer, you can do this application in 10 or 12 or 15 minutes. Very simple. And that's submitting documents too.
Yeah.
And I'll call this guy back and we'll talk through the loan scenarios and the different down payment options that he was talking about doing and what difference it would make in terms of his monthly payment. Now, interestingly enough, this is, I think, an important point. We say as loan people, the pre-qualification, pre-approval process is the most important thing to do first. Now, how often does that happen? About 10 or 20% of the time. Because what happens first is kind of the sexy fun part where you start dreaming about a house and you go out and you start looking and you call a real estate agent and you get connected and you go out and that's this guy's situation exactly. He finds a piece of property that has the acreage that he wants and has the house that he wants and has the shop that he wants. So he's got the dream.
Yep.
And they go out and see it. And now we're all excited. And it's like, oh, and now I'm going to do what Kanye tells me to do, which is to get my money right. And he's going to be a great qualifier. But it usually happens that way because let's be honest about this. The house is a lot more fun. Organizing the garage is a lot more fun. Putting the fire pit in the backyard, all of that stuff is a lot sexier than talking to a loan guy about what your monthly payment's going to be and how your down payment's going to play out.
Right.
So again, it's a great example of how things don't always follow the very best way that we think in terms of a sequence of events, but we'll all get there eventually. You got to get that money squared away. But true to what you said is that everybody's stressed out now because the target is in there, the dream is already invested, the agent's ready to go, but everybody's got to throw the brakes on and say, oh, let me fit in this pre-qualification process on a Monday in the middle of a workday. So it's stressful, add stress.
It is. And what Zach said, and I've said it a bunch as well, we get the most boring pain in the butt part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody enjoys sending in pay stubs. Nobody enjoys me reviewing a credit report with them. They enjoy the brainstorming. What could we do with this room? Oh, I'm making this my man cave. This is my she shed over here. This is the kids' room. Like everybody loves that part because it brings in basically the same excitement and ideas you see on like the Property Brothers and the Chip and Joanna shows and all those renovation shows and whatnot. It brings all that to life. And by the way, we're over here bugging you about, hey, I need a letter of explanation as to why 2 other people pulled your credit last month. And I need to know what this is on your bank statement. Nobody enjoys that.
Right.
Nobody, it's like going to the doctor. You don't enjoy it. Probably more like the dentist, if we're being honest. But nobody enjoys that. So, however, a lot of times, like Jack was saying, realtors too, I can't echo this enough. I don't care if you sell one house a year or 100 houses a year, pre-qualify first, because the money's just not worth it to be chasing and desperate after a customer if they're not willing to. We literally can, like Zach was saying, it can be done in 15, 20, 30 minutes. And
Yeah.
depending on how fast docs come in, you have an actual pre-approval even faster, not just a pre-qualification.
Right.
And if you don't know the difference, check our other videos on this channel because we talk about that. But that right there, like, it's not worth wasting your time if somebody's not willing to put in the 30 minutes up front just to make sure, so you don't spend hours out on a weekend showing people property and whatnot. And maybe they qualify, but not for what they want. That could be another thing. And Zach and I don't want to deliver bad news. Like, it's the last thing we want to do is be a dream crusher. That's the last thing. It sucks. Trust me.
Well, and
Um,
I'll throw in here too. My singular goal in the pre-qualification, pre-approval process, and I conceptualized this some number of years ago as things were, we were in a really hot market. If I can achieve in the, first phone call application, second phone call to review the loan, the loan goals and the loan process, the loan
yeah.
options that you qualify for. My goal in hanging that phone up is to say, do you have any questions? Are you crystal clear about what you have and where you're going with this loan pre-approval? Thank you very much. Go out and shop happy. The focus of all of this process for me is to clarify the money. And what that does is it solves half of the stress and problems in the brain that a home buyer is going through. You've got the house problems and the property problems, and is this going to work? And how are we going to make this work? And I really don't like that hill, and the backyard kind of slopes off, and all of that stress about the property. But if they're also stressed about, I don't know what this is going to do to my monthly payment, and I don't know exactly what this is going to look like, and how much is my down payment, and I don't know what the loan, that's too much. And what that creates is an indecisive buyer, which is bad for everybody, primarily the buyer, because they're going to miss out on the dream property if they're all worried about what this money thing looks like. So if we can solve all those money concerns and money worries and money problems in the pre-approval process, then it really is fun. It's like the Chip and Joanna reveal at the end of the show. It's you get into the fun part, and the home buying process is more of kind of building the dream as opposed to struggling through the nightmare.
Yeah. Another thing, so many people have, it's repeat buyers more likely. If they haven't bought in 5, 6, 7, 8 years, the process is easier now. Like, technology has allowed it to be easier. So I had somebody the other day say, I don't remember it ever being this easy. And that's not bragging on me. There's a lot of companies that can make it easy. Okay. I'm just talking about the way technology has evolved. It really is pretty simple. It's just a checklist. Like, that's all it is. It's a checklist and calculations and verifications. It's very simple.
You're not making an appointment to come down and have us sit in front of us while we write out your application.
No, that's not the case at all. All right. So once that happens, you're pre-qualified. You go out, you look at houses. Usually a realtor will set up, a couple of things, backpedal real quick. I don't want to spend a ton of time here, but you can interview, your realtor. Most of the time you have somebody who's used someone and they recommend this person for you. And you just maybe do a little bit of double checking, say, okay, just making sure you're good and making sure, you feel normal, and have a meeting or two, and they'll do a buyer consult or meet with you or talk over the phone and so forth. And you make sure it's going to be a good fit. Now, the key here is, if you don't think it's going to be a good fit, you need to address that early, because it's not fair to agents to have them show you a house or two and then all of a sudden decide you want to switch, or switch later on in the process. Okay. That can also be said the same for lenders. I am fine if anybody ever wants to shop me. I don't have a problem with it, because most people do anyway. But it's one of those, like, you need to kind of pick out who you're going to work with in the transaction early on. It's another like precursor to actually going under contract, because you're going to run into situations where you need someone kind of in your corner and helping you and explaining. And whether that's an agent, meaning a realtor, or a loan officer, you don't want them to do all the work and then shop after the fact. It
Right.
ends up there's first of all, there's nothing illegal about it. You can do it. It just more comes from a common courtesy in people's time is what it
Yeah.
comes down to. That's all it is. So there's nothing against it. It's just more like, hey, if you do it in the right steps, then nobody gets upset or frustrated, or does what I call scorekeeping or anything like that. When you hire the agent, they're going to set up a search for you, and you're going to likely get emails or recommendations from them. Hey, these are the houses that I see that kind of fit. And then some agents will also have their, their finger on the pulse of the market and with other relationships and colleagues, where they say, hey, this one's not on the market, but I know this agent, she's in my office. She's got a listing that's coming, and maybe we could be first to it. Or, hey, this guy over here may have something that's coming up for sale, that we could talk to him about before it ever gets to the market. So they'll kind of know those things and help you. And then you can set up, going and touring those homes, visiting those homes, and deciding if you want to make an offer. Anything I missed on that one?
No, all of that's really great advice. Having a great agent and a great loan officer in your corner, and at least have one of those. I think that people really make a mistake working with really new loan officers because there's so much to know about the finance side of things. But I'm thinking back the last 6 months on several occasions. I've been working with relatively green agents because, as a family member, somebody relatively new to the business or whatever. But because I've got the experience that I've got as a loan officer, I can kind of help that green agent through the transaction, make
Yep.
some recommendations. I'm not making recommendations about the buying process, but I'm going in there and talking about, hey, seller paid closing costs. This is a great market to negotiate in. This is something that you need to think about. Please lean on me really hard if you need some advice about this or that, and kind of keeping the transaction between the ditches as we go through. That's what professionals do for each other. And so, it choosing the right people to work with is very important.
Yep. At the point that you decide, okay, you want to make an offer, you've looked at 5 homes, you want to make an offer. The agent will kind of help you come up with an idea of how to negotiate, what to offer, what to ask for, what the game plan is. There should always be a strategy. Okay, we're going to go in here. I expect that they come back somewhere around here, and then we'll go in with our final offer and see if we can make it work. But and there's going to be different tactics and strategies and whatnot. But the next step is, when you're writing that contract, is being strategic about it and what you're going to do, and also what to prepare for. Because hey, you may love the home, but you may not connect on terms. And if you don't, then it's okay. It is what it is, and you just move to the next one. But the big one after that is, once you're under contract, one, you deposit earnest money. That's going to cost money from you, and it also gets applied towards your down payment. But you have to give money to the seller and say, hey, I'm putting a deposit down on the house. And you can still get that money back, but only based on the contingencies and the outs that are in the contract. The next step, though, I'm going to let you run with this one, Zach, that always gets weird because of timing, right? And I'm going to lead you down this path, but it comes with your home inspection and our appraisal, because you got to time them, because we don't want you to waste money on an appraisal. But there's also certain timelines and limits inside of a contract where things have to be done, and for you to get a home inspection. And unfortunately, sometimes this can just be money out of pocket that you don't get back, depending on the results.
Right. So a home inspection is not required by the lender. A home appraisal is required by the lender. Both of these cost money, probably about the same these days. Home inspection, $400 or $500, and an appraisal about $600. So in my opinion, more homes fall out on inspection than on appraisal, because appraisals are really driven by market value, and most homes are priced really pretty close to market value. But a home may have some basic problems with it, structural problems, mechanical issues, whatever. Maybe the homeowner doesn't even know those exist until an inspector gets in there. So the home inspection is really the nuts and bolts inspection of the house. They're underneath there in the crawl space. They're up in the attic. They're testing the temperature of the air coming out of the vents. They're looking for leaks. They're looking for structural problems, cracks, kind of a cursory review of maybe insect damage. So always a lot of problems come up in home inspections, and those are negotiable. So oftentimes we see sellers will give concessions or make repairs or this or that. So home inspectors come up with a list of 36 things, and they agree that the seller agrees that they're going to fix 6 of those, and 30 of them don't really matter because that's a crack in a switch plate or something, and it's very simple. But we want to make sure, if we have time, that home inspection gets done before the appraisal inspection is done, because once that appraiser has gone out to the house, now you spend another $600. And if more houses fall out on the inspection than on the appraisal, what if you get the home inspection and the appraisal the same day, and the home inspection comes back and says, well, gosh, you've got major structural damage, and you've got water in the crawl space, and you've got termites and, foundation cracks. Yeah. Well, you're not going to buy the house, but you bought an appraisal too. So if we got a little bit of time, and this is an easy market to do this in, Chad, because
right now it is.
Volume is down, and we're not as dependent on schedules and kind of struggling around that stuff. But every time, man, I'll send out a pre-approval letter, and I'll get a note or a text from the agent that says, hey, we're under contract. And my first question is, when's the inspection? When's the inspection? Because I'm going to create my strategy from that inspection date, get in touch with the buyer, start talking about the next phases, which is getting the loan process moving forward. But I'm trying to time that appraisal. And sometimes, like I had a situation last week where I'd advised a buyer, say, listen, do not pay for the appraisal fee until you have the home inspection in. Because in our system, if you don't pay for the appraisal fee, the appraisal doesn't get ordered. And it just so happened on this particular scenario, as I was going through it, it was very preliminary. We got under contract. I ran it. We didn't have to have an appraisal at all on this particular house. So now I'm like, hey, figure out the appraisal stuff, the inspection stuff, and we're good to go. We're just rolling along with it. That's the one that you saw come through this morning, Chad. So that process requires some strategizing and some timing. And sometimes when we've got, an 18 or 19 day closing, we just order everything at the same time and say, listen, if you, Mr. Buyer, if you want to make it to the church on time, we're going to just start spending money. Get that inspection done as quickly as possible. Now, there are situations where we can pull the appraisal off of it if the inspection goes bad, but it has to go bad before the inspector starts driving out there for the appraisal.
Yeah. So at this point, everything just kind of pauses with the house. There's really nothing else to do once the inspection's done. The appraisal, nothing you can do there. And the seller is anticipating an appraiser coming out to the home. So once your home inspection's done and you've agreed on everything, the house stuff kind of stops. Mm-hmm. And really it just becomes setting up your utilities, getting the internet and television and all that stuff, an install date, and getting movers and all these things. And you've probably done some of this, especially the mover side, maybe even before that, because you can always just cancel it if you need to. And you want to get on their schedule, but you've kind of laid out some of this transition stuff and how's it going to work and the logistics and what's going to happen and so forth. So once you do all that, then at that point, it's like, okay, we're good. And it's all about the loan here. Now, hopefully you were pre-qualified and pre-approved. And so you're good on the loan side, barring any kind of just simple mistakes. Okay. Humans make mistakes. Barring something that you didn't think was a big deal, turns out it is a big deal. Barring just something blowing up, and it does happen. The goal, it happens to every loan officer, happens to us as well. But the goal is to minimize it. I think it's happened to me once or twice in the last 2 or 3 years versus some people who do loans. It may happen to them once a month, once every week. It depends, right? But that's why you try to do all the due diligence up front and just try to make sure you're asking the right questions, analyzing all the info and so forth. you go to underwriting. And in underwriting, that's where you get the first approval. It's called the initial approval. Once underwriting's complete, the loan officer or the processor, probably the processor, is going to ask you for a few things. And they're going to say, your loan's approved as long as we can get these 4, 5, 6, 10 things, whatever they are. A handful of those will be your responsibility as the homeowner or the buyer. The rest of them are more likely third-party items, meaning waiting on the appraisal to come in. We can't close till we have the appraisal report back, so we're just waiting on it. We're probably waiting on the title company to give us their commitment back. We may be waiting on some sort of verification item to come in, whatever the case may be. And then once that list is back, the processor then packages it all up, puts a little bow on it, and they send it in for final approval. That's when hopefully you have nothing else left to obtain and you get what's called clear to close, or CTC. And that means you're done. The only thing left at this point is signed documents at the attorney's office at the closing table. Then you can start all the stress about the movers and actually going through moving day and packing and getting everything done and so forth, and get ready to start making mortgage payments. But the process, and maybe, I don't know, I just don't feel like it's that complicated or that difficult, to be honest. I think it's been kind of scarred and battered and beaten up over time, and has this stereotype and this stigma. But really, as long as things are done in the correct order and people are on the same page and communicating, it's really not that hard. And it can be done in 2 weeks. Like that's the one, Zach, that always blows my mind is you could sit in your living room one weekend and then 2, 3 weeks later be sitting in a different living room that you own.
Right.
That's kind of crazy, but it is possible and it's very doable and it happens all the time.
Well, and I have to be sensitive too, Chad, to the sometimes you'll hear complaints about, well, why didn't they ask this for this from me up front? Or it just felt like I was getting documents after documents. They always coming back and asking for something else. And I think that a lot of that, if you're working with a quality system from the loan side, a good loan officer with a good system behind them, probably related to this overall general feeling of stress. And I think that there's some reasonableness to it. Maybe that Chad, we're a little bit insensitive to, what those requests look like. We had a phone call. I did an application 6 weeks ago and I gave you my pay stubs and I gave you my bank statements. And now we're 2 weeks into the loan process. The appraisal is back and you're asking me for pay stubs and bank statements again. I already gave you those. And what
you don't need those. What do you need those for?
What do you need those for? Or what did you do with them? Maybe is a little bit more sinister accusation. And what you have to understand is that our documentation all has to be dated within a certain period, within a certain time of the closing date, not of the application date. So if you gave me docs 6 months ago, while those are important, and I check in with you and say you still got the same job, still making the same money, still got the same down payment, we're still going to have to re-document that as we go into the closing, because we've got a lot of documentation standards that have to be done within 30 days of closing. So while there are some additional requests, and sometimes we have to chase a few things down. I had a loan closing this month that is going to, we did some chasing down on some large deposits in a bank statement because we've got all these obligations with the banking system, with the feds, the Homeland Security Act, Dodd-Frank Act, all of these things that we've got to kind of abide by about large deposits. And it's our job to fit all these within the rules, but hopefully we're just kind of coming after you and saying, hey, can you send me this document? Hey, will you DocuSign this explanation here? But overall, I think that the loan process, if you're dealing with somebody who knows what they're doing and you've got a good system behind you, then it really is minimized. And I think about, Chad, here's the kind of the unsung heroes of the loan business. How much time and stress and effort do our processors at our company save both us as loan officers and our borrowers and real estate agents by being so dang expert at what they do. I mean,
Mhm.
they're always in this kind of magician mode trying to minimize the impact of,
Yeah.
stressful extra work.
Yep. Yeah.
So that's a critically important part. I might be a great loan officer, but if my support is terrible, I'm awful because it stresses me out, and I've got no back, and that really, really is where the magic happens in the mortgage business.
Yeah. 100%. Um, Final thoughts on any of this?
Well, it took us 30 minutes to explain it. Your pre-approval process might take that long. It takes a longer
You could
time
already
before
be pre-approved right now. That's it.
I
Yeah.
know. I mean, that's the simplicity of it. And if you do it in order, final thoughts are back to where you started. If you do it in order and we take care of business on the front side and just roll with it, we're not going to ask you for anything that we don't absolutely, positively, 100% need. We are not into busy work in the mortgage business.
No.
So it really can be pretty simple and straightforward. Not to say it's not stressful to move everything in your life and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, but the money side doesn't need to be that hard.
Right. Yeah, we don't get paid per document. I promise.
Yeah.
The last thing I want is more documents, okay? I don't
It,
enjoy scrolling through a
yeah.
PDF that contains 80 pages. That's
It
nothing
costs
fun
us
about
money
that.
to have documents.
It
Documents
does.
cost us money.
It
So,
does.
yeah.
Yeah, inflation hit the document industry also. Okay, like it hit everywhere. All right, so we're not immune to that. My biggest thing too is don't take things personal in these transactions.
No.
As much as we want to help, and trust me, Zach and I especially, we will flip over every single possible rock. Like I've gotten to a point in life where I care so much about loans getting closed. And yes, obviously I get paid, but making sure people aren't disappointed
Right.
that I have gotten to where I literally won't answer emails almost past 8 or 9 o'clock anymore because if I look at my phone and I see them, then I just lay in bed and think about how do I fix the problem or
We
what's my
talk about that a
rebuttal
lot.
or yeah,
We,
or how am I going to
yeah.
overcome this hurdle? And I'm sitting here stressing at 9 p.m. and everybody else is just la di da and because they don't know there's a problem or a potential problem.
Yeah.
And so never take things personal in this industry or in this qualification process or buying a home. People make mistakes. Everything, though, is hopefully done in a good faith effort.
Right.
And it's nothing personal in the sense, too, that the numbers are what they are, meaning I have self employed people a lot and they say, well, I don't understand. I make this much money. I gotcha. But you may be an A plus borrower from a common sense world but a qualification world is a completely different thing and how they look at you and whether or not a home loan can be provided for you. So that's a big one to me that I just
Yeah.
seem to get quite a bit throughout our time. But all right, that's 16 episodes in the books. If you can do us a favor, like, subscribe, comment, follow. We don't download, share, maybe hit the bell, do all those things on his. It is Zach Jones at Zach Jones Loans. Mine right here at This Chad is Real. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. We both have various videos and whatnot that we've put out. Hopefully, you can enjoy those. You can go back and see some other episodes, watch our commentary. Zach does a fantastic job every day with new content and reels and so forth. And I've been trying to do more with YouTube videos. So hopefully you guys enjoy it. And we appreciate you hanging out with us and being a part of all this with you. And we'll see you next week. Episode number 17 coming up then. Have a good one.
Thanks for hopping on.